5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are live. Coming to you live. Has it been live? Say what's up to the people, Dad.
Hey, I hope not too many of you are being personally impacted by the government shutdown.
Shutdown.
We say showdown, don't
It's
I?
a showdown, too.
It's a showdown to a shutdown.
It's a showdown and a shutdown.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, supposedly, of course, those of you who are on furlough without pay will eventually be paid, at least in theory. That's the situation. I certainly hope it comes about. But I understand, that's no consolation for modest income people who live paycheck to paycheck. This is another example of cruelty that we have seen ever since Donald Trump became president. And he's promised to expand the cruelty by firing additional numbers of people. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, we will get into that.
Okay.
For sure, once I intro the topic. You might notice that we're a little early today. That's mostly because he wanted to watch the Yankees game.
Right.
To be frank.
And we don't want to compete with both the Yankees game and Thursday night football.
Right. There's Thursday night football. There's playoff baseball. So we thought, hey, why don't we come in a little bit early? Hopefully it works for you. If not, hopefully you can catch it on once it's uploaded to YouTube. And
I'm a big Yankees fan.
Yeah.
But we wanted not to cancel the show because discussion of this government shutdown through showdown is of such critical importance, not just to government employees, but to all of us.
True. All right, let's get into it. The government is shut down. Trump is calling the government shutdown an unprecedented opportunity, saying his chance to gut more, quote, democratic priorities. But Democrats may have more leverage in the shutdown fight than people realize, especially if GOP demands splinter their own ranks. And the GOP is saying Obamacare subsidies tied to the shutdown don't matter, but millions of Americans rely on them and strongly disagree. Additionally, federal agencies are blaming Democrats for the shutdown. Ethic experts warn that could violate the Hatch Act. And I quote, this is from the HUD website, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. In bright red on their homepage, it says, the radical left in Congress shut down the government. HUD will use available resources to help Americans in need. Woo! A lot going on with this shutdown, Dad.
There sure is. Now, before we get to the guts of the analysis, a bit of clarification.
Okay, thanks.
A government shutdown doesn't mean that every government function is shut down or every government employee is on furlough. Only about half or fewer of all government federal employees are on furlough.
Right, but a lot of them are working without pay, too.
They're all, a lot of them are working without pay if they're not furloughed.
Right.
But supposedly critical government functions are going on. Of course, ICE can't stop these immigration raids.
No,
oh, my God. We've been without them for decades, but they're essential. The military, the FBI, certain healthcare functions. You will still get your Social Security. You will still get your Medicare, your Medicaid, and your food stamps. But this, as we said, impacts hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of government workers and their families and anyone who depends upon them. Now, here is the rub, supposedly, and the reason that Sam indicated that some analysts believe, as opposed to previous shutdowns, that the Democrats have a lot more leverage than they have this time. The big rub, the big disagreement is whether a resolution to continue the government should include the subsidies under Obamacare, or technically the Affordable Care Act of 2010. Republicans have adamantly opposed this, going back to the usual big lie, Whenever they want to oppose something, what do they try to scare you with?
Immigrants.
Immigrants. Oh, my God. And as J.D. Vance said, Democrats demand to fund, quote, free health care for illegals. This is what they said, when they lied during the campaign, saying Democrats were taking the funding away from FEMA and giving it to illegal immigrants. Or they said, illegal immigrants are stealing your cats and dogs and eating them. Or when they said, illegal immigrants are these bloodthirsty killers, when in fact they have a much lower rate of crime or violent crime than native-born Americans. I can go on. They always have a lie about so-called illegal immigrants to scare you and to obscure the truth. Are illegal immigrants eligible for subsidies under the Affordable Care Act, Sam?
No.
No. And again, they don't care whether their lies are readily refuted.
I heard Mike Johnson when someone fact-checked him, I think it was on CNN, he tried to say, well, yeah, maybe it doesn't directly go to illegals, but in the end, illegals will get free health care. So, at a certain point, it's like, you blame every little thing that ever happens in America on illegal immigrants. It's eye-rolling, to say the least.
Yeah, just check out the website, healthcare.gov, and it's absolutely plain and clear that illegal immigrants are not eligible. So once again, they trotted out the big lie to try to instill fear in all of us in a way that undermines the ordinary Americans, not illegal immigrants, but legal residents and overwhelmingly U.S. citizens who benefit from this. I'll get to that in a moment. The other argument they make, we'll be happy to consider your proposals on the Affordable Care Act only when the government is funded, not under the gun of a government shutdown. If you believe that, Sam, what do I have to sell you?
A big bridge in Brooklyn. And isn't the thing, so the government has shut down twice under Trump, which means that the Democrat, I don't know, were they in the minority in the first Trump shutdown? I don't remember.
Yes.
Right. So they're blaming the Democrats because, in essence, not enough Democrats came to the table and signed the continuing resolution, so the government shut down. But I see Democrats making the point that when shutdowns were looming under Biden and they had the majority, they did meet with Republicans and they did compromise. And that's why the government stayed open. But here, Republicans they didn't want to compromise, so that's why the government shut down. Is that true? Do you know?
Yes. And what are the chances that the Republicans are all of a sudden going to do about face 180 degrees on the Affordable Care Act when there's no leverage? When the Democrats don't have the leverage of a government shutdown, if they're totally unwilling to deal with this issue now, they're certainly not going to be willing to deal with it at the end of the year where they're under pressure to adjourn. And let's not forget, these rates have to be set, for next year. There is an urgent time constraint on this as well. So their arguments, have absolutely no validity. They're either scare tactics or another form of the big lie. Oh, yeah, we'll negotiate this with you when we're under no pressure. Right.
And I heard J.D. Vance saying, the subsidies don't go into effect until next year. And it's like, well, next year is a couple months away, dude. He's making it sound like it's some distant thing so far away. But I heard a congressperson from, I think, Washington State say that November 1st is when people can start applying. Right. So, again, they're just outright lying. I mean, I'm sick of even saying that they're twisting reality. They're
not twisting. It's just an outright big lie. Because this needs to be done now.
The idea that it starts next year is a twisting of reality, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's next year. It's like, but next year is what? November, December, 2, 3 months away.
And you set the rates now for next year.
Right. And as this congressperson, I heard them point out, November 1st is when people can start applying. That's next month. So what, they're supposed to wait till after people, it's just all a load of bullshit from people like Vance, people like Trump, people like Mike Johnson. A load of BS, Dad.
Yes. You want to hear the final load of BS?
Yes.
That this benefits millionaires. Well, the 13.4 million Americans, not just a few. And let's not forget, that's, multiply that by their kids, their dependents, their spouses. It's, tens of millions of people depend upon this. The maximum household income is $96,450 for a family of four. Pretty far cry from millionaires.
What's their? I don't even understand their argument. Who are the millionaires?
I have no idea.
I don't even understand that.
Supposedly, anyone can get these subsidies, even millionaires.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah. And by the way, while the government is shut down, who's getting paid?
ICE? I don't know who.
Everyone in Congress. All these people in Congress who are belly aching, many of whom, especially the Republicans, are in fact millionaires. And even in some cases, like Trump, billionaires. But, we can't actually help middle-class, ordinary people. This study by independent healthcare organizations show sample 40-year-olds, okay, with an income of $23,475. I don't see how even a single person can get along with that. Right now, they can get health care for zero, which is all they can afford. If the subsidies aren't restored, their costs go up to $920 a year, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. That is the rough equivalent of a fourth of their annual food budget and a third of their spending on utilities and fuel. So they've got to make a choice. Are we going to eat? Are we going to have health care? Are we going to be able to be warm and keep the lights on? Are we going to have health care? But look at even, middle-income people making $84,600. The annual premium benchmark for a silver tier ACA, American Affordable Act plan, would rise to about $21,340, up from $7,025 under current rules. That's a $14,000 a year increase. That's a basic tripling of the subsidies. The new figure would be more than double their food budget and more than 4 times their utility and fuel spending. And these are the illegals and the supposed billionaires that the Republicans don't want to help. They are you and me. They are less affluent, middle-class Americans who should not be forced to make a choice between health insurance and paying for food or keeping the lights on or keeping themselves warm. None of those millionaires in Congress have to worry about it. Certainly multi-millionaires like billionaires like Donald Trump don't have to worry about this. But the supposed ordinary people that as populists they defend have to worry about it a lot. And another reason why Democrats have leverage here is that the polls are very much against the Republicans. While there's a substantial proportion of Americans who blame both, but by a substantial double-digit margin, 15 to 20%, the American people blame Republicans and Trump more than Democrats in Congress. And by overwhelming margins, by over 70% margins, the American people favor keeping, not abolishing these subsidies.
And not to mention the attack on everyday Americans. Throughout this entire shutdown, the Trump administration is threatening to fire even more federal employees. And, they want to make people think that these federal employees are some part of the deep state, which is absolute total bullshit. They are everyday. I've worked with them for many years. I was one. They were everyday, hardworking Americans. And this whole idea that you see the right wing putting out as, this is just to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse is total BS. The American people will not see a cent more in their pocket from any of these cuts that happened or will happen. In fact, most of the savings that will come from these cuts will go to Donald Trump's tax breaks for the richest people.
Right. they are themselves not going to save a penny because government will be operating at higher costs, less efficiently. People will not be contributing to their economies. They will be paying fewer taxes. They'll be draining the government for unemployment benefits. And we've seen in a number of cases, they have been so derelict in who they were firing that they realized they were gutting absolutely essential services like taking care of our nuclear stockpile, and they had to hire people back at higher costs. Higher costs. So there is not evidence that any of this saves 1 cent for everyday Americans.
I saw
helps the budget deficit.
I saw firsthand how Doge was going about their business. I got their emails directly into my inbox. There was no assessment of anybody's job, no assessment of whether their job contributed to any waste, fraud, and abuse. They went in essentially blindfolded with a weed whacker and went like this. They sent out emails to the entire federal workforce just saying, hey, if you feel like it, quit. I mean, and in what world is that rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse? That's blowing up, metaphorically, the federal government. I don't know how they're
what end?
Right, and I don't know how they're going to go about it this time, but I can't imagine it's going to be more, thoughtful and systematic than last time.
Here's another interesting poll figure. I cited a bunch of them a moment ago. By 52 to 36%, Americans in a Strength in Numbers Vericite poll from mid-September said 52 to 36, Democrats should withhold their votes unless Republicans agree to restore funding for some government health care programs. These are popular programs supported by 3/4 of the American people. They help ordinary individuals, not illegal immigrants, not billionaires and millionaires.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see what happens. Part of me sort of thinks that the Trump administration warning that they're going to fire thousands of federal employees is a bit of a bluff and a bit of maybe a leverage tactic, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, who knows? You never know with Trump.
Yeah. He always tacos,
Always tacos.
I think he might taco on this. I don't think they have, not that I don't think they have any plan to do this. Not that stops them, but I don't think they have their ducks in a row to even start doing this. I could be completely wrong because they are good at, like I said, just going in with a weed whack, closing their eyes.
They don't need a real plan, do they?
So that is sort of a counter argument to my argument. But I do wonder if it is a bluff a little bit.
Trump bluffs and tacos all the time.
So
the trouble is you never know when he is and when he isn't.
So you don't put any blame on the Dems for the shutdown. You're saying this is a Republican shutdown. They own it.
Yes, unless you think Democrats should cave in on these critical healthcare programs that 75% of the American people support. And it's not just me saying this. A majority of Americans support what the Democrats are doing.
Right. And it's funny because
which is really unusual in a shutdown.
It's funny because there was a clip in 2024 of J.D. Vance talking about the looming shutdown when he was a senator and talking about how Republicans needed to use their leverage. And now, of course, he's saying the exact opposite, J.D. Vance,
I don't understand why he's not in traction. He has swiveled his head 180 degrees from when he was in the Senate to now so many times that I don't understand how his neck is still intact.
Got him. That was a good one. Got him. All right. Anything else on the shutdown? Or you want to move on to the next topic?
We could spend a whole show on the shutdown, but there are other important things that I think we ought to get to.
One question I did want to ask you. What's this? I mean, I read the HUD website. What's this deal with all these federal agencies posting on their website that the radical left Democrats... I mean, is there anybody with a spine left in these agencies that are just going to say to Trump, you know what? That's ridiculous. I'm not going to put on our website that the radical left, whatever they're putting. Yeah. Is there anybody? I mean, we talk about Democrats have no spine. I don't know, man. I don't think
it's not a matter of Republicans having no spine. They agree with Trump. That's what makes it so frightening. It's not as if they're acting solely because they're afraid of Trump. There is something to that. But, when you look at dictators and how they seize power, yes, they seize power in part because people fear them. They're afraid of them. They're afraid not to go along. But they also seize power by persuading people through the big lie, the classic technique of dictators, and gain public support. There's a good bit of literature about the Nazi regime, how just ordinary Germans, everyday people, willingly participated in the gassing and machine gunning of Jews. They didn't do it just because they were afraid or because they were forced to do it. The great horror was they willingly participated. I'm not comparing what's going on today to the Holocaust, but I'm making the bigger point that people go along because they come to believe in the lies of the dictator, not just because they're afraid. And that's so chilling.
I'm not saying that necessarily they're afraid. And I don't know, how could a sane person agree with this? Agree with putting these radical left messages on government agencies?
How could a sane person agree with gassing Jews?
Well, yeah.
A much more extreme.
Sure.
And yet ordinary, sane people, millions of them were complicit in this. And that's I can't emphasize too much. It's all in my book, Conservative at the Core, in which I explain Trump is not an aberration. He is the culmination of 100 years of conservative history in the United States, and he holds sway over the Republican Party only in small part because of fear, in much greater part because he articulates and represents what conservatives have stood for 100 years, but in recent years, others have been too frightened, too worried to articulate what Trump does. And that's really important to understand.
Right. All right, let's move on to our next.
And that helps explain the 180-degree, neck-breaking twists of J.D. Vance.
J.D. Vance is beyond a hypocrite. I don't even know what the word. Well,
we've talked about this before. Yeah. We need a new word.
Right. He was calling Trump a Nazi before anybody else was.
Long before.
Now he's his vice president.
Yeah.
That's a crazy 180.
Not just as vice president, but parroting everything that Trump says and stands for.
Sometimes when I watch J.D. Vance, it almost feels like he's an actor.
I know.
He's so again, parody. He's so down the line in terms of this sort of fascist authoritarian rhetoric. But that is so different than the man he was
just a few years ago.
Yeah,
we're not talking 20 years ago.
Yeah, 5-10 years ago. It's holy moly, it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
All right, our next topic. You ready?
I'm always ready.
The Trump administration is pushing colleges to sign a new, quote, compact or risk losing out on federal funding preferences.
If it wasn't for the shutdown, this would be our blaring in red lights headline. This is an unprecedented attempt for Trump to impose his own political orthodoxy on private and public, by the way, on institutions of higher learning. And he is using the power of the federal government to do that. A classic move of authoritarians. You bully institutions into conforming to your own political orthodoxies and your own political interests. And he's saying, in effect, if you don't do this, if you don't agree to these demands, including not, teaching or promulgating things that would call into question or embarrass conservatives, which could be anything other than the Trump party line. If you don't conform to this, guess what you're not going to get?
Money, money, money.
That's right. He controls, hundreds of billions of dollars in federal aid and grants to American institutions of higher learning. And he has tremendous power. And this is what the framers feared. The framers understood that they were giving awesome power to the chief executive, who would be both the head of the executive branch and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And they had just shed blood to free themselves from a tyrant, King George III. And their greatest fear by far about the corruption of their fledgling new democratic republic was corruption and authoritarianism in the hands of the president, who they gave this awesome power to. That's why they tried to balance as best they could the power of the presidency against the other two branches of government, have, separation of powers between the presidency, the judiciary, and Congress, and why they had the 10th Amendment, which reserves significant powers to the states as another check on the presidency. But as James Madison said, and I'm paraphrasing, you can put all the paper safeguards you want into effect, and in the end, it comes down to virtue. If we, and I'm going off Madison now, if we have someone as powerful as a president, way more powerful today than they were in Madison's time, who lacks virtue and who wants to rule as an authoritarian, then all of the paper restraints may not be enough. That may indeed put our democratic republic in great peril. And we're seeing those fears emerge right before our eyes. And we're seeing it in the two areas which are classic for dictators to gain power. Number one, controlling what we believe and what we think and what we know, controlling education, controlling communication, and two, controlling the military. Let me see if I can find this. I have a great quote here from Alexander Hamilton. You know him?
Alexander Hamilton. I am Alexander Hamilton.
That's him. It's hard with one hand.
You want me to help? Yeah.
Yeah, I need some help.
That was from the musical Hamilton.
Oh, you were very good at that.
Thanks. You liked Hamilton, right?
I love the music. I didn't think I would.
Yeah.
So, I find...
I didn't think I would either. And I
All right, here it is.
Aha.
The great exponent of the American Constitution, Alexander Hamilton.
Alexander Hamilton.
You may or may not be familiar with the Federalist Papers, written by Hamilton, Madison, and John Jay.
I am.
Which were the great expositions of the meaning and implications of the Constitution and what we needed to do to safeguard our democratic republic. Remember when, interestingly, a woman asked Benjamin Franklin after the Constitutional Convention, do we have a republic? And Franklin says, yes, if we can keep it. They were very, very worried about keeping our republic. And here's what Hamilton said about the dangers of a politicized military. This is right after the Constitution, Federalist number 8. Quote, when the military state becomes elevated above the civil, citizens are subjected to frequent infringements on their rights, unquote, and they come to regard the soldier, quote, as not only their protector, but their superior. He went on to say, once that takes hold, quote, it becomes nearly impossible to resist usurpation supported by the military power, unquote. Alexander Hamilton, one of the great framers of our democratic republic, warning about the putting the military superior to the civilians. That's why many years later, in 1878, Congress passed the Posse Comitatus Act, expressly prohibiting the use of the military for domestic law enforcement, except under the most extraordinary and limited of circumstances. Now we're seeing both thought control and the use of the military power to threaten, in a way, our democracy hasn't been threatened since the Civil War.
Can you sing us a song from Hamilton?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Do you need this?
I might. I don't think so. Do we have any more topics?
Yeah, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more topics.
I don't know if we can go through all of them. How much time do we have?
We're almost at 30 minutes.
Yeah.
We got about 15 more minutes to do topics. All right, I'll give you which one you want to do next. How about that?
I want to do the Pope.
Oh, that was the next one I had.
Yeah. The American Pope.
Pope Leo the 14th, the American Pope, blasted America's immigration crackdown. Maybe we should say Trump's immigration crackdown, calling the inhumane treatment of migrants flatly not pro-life. That's a quote.
Here is the Pope, the most important institution, the Catholic Church, in opposition to abortion, but exposing another big lie. The big lie behind the American right-wing anti-abortion movement. He said you cannot judge politicians solely on abortion. You've got to look at the full range of their policy positions and their actions. He said, quote, someone who says I'm against abortion, but is in favor of the death penalty. God, Donald Trump is probably the biggest supporter of the death penalty we ever had in the presidency. Someone who says I'm against abortion, but is in favor of the death penalty is not really pro-life. And someone who says I'm against abortion, but I'm in agreement with the inhumane treatment of immigrants in the United States, I don't know if that's pro-life. It's incredible. He's saying, just because of your position on abortion, that does not make you pro-life. That's another big lie. We've got to look at the whole range of your positions and your respect for life. You can't be pro-life when you're so powerfully in support of the death penalty like Donald Trump. You can't be pro-life when you back the inhumane treatment of immigrants in the United States. Immigrants are people. For the Catholic Church, they are still people with immortal souls. And simply because they are illegal immigrants, a victimless crime, by the way. Remember Trump claimed, the verdict against me in the state financial fraud case, it's bogus because there are no victims. There have to be real victims. Well, there were real victims there. But there's no automatic real victim just because you violate the immigration laws. The great majority, as we've pointed out previously, of those arrested and detained have no criminal record whatsoever, 72%, and most of the remainder only have trivial criminal convictions for things like minor traffic violations. These are people, the Pope says, if you are really pro-life, yes, you can have your policies on immigration, but you cannot treat people inhumanely like you're doing here. This is one of the great moral authorities of the world.
Right. Isn't it possible to enforce immigration law and not treat these people like dirt on your shoe? Those things are not necessarily, those things should be mutually exclusive. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Did I use that word?
We have in the Constitution, Sam, a clause which says no cruel and unusual punishment.
Right.
The framers recognize that even when you're dealing with criminals, you deal with them humanely. Doesn't mean you don't punish them.
Right.
Doesn't mean you don't lock them away.
Right.
But it means you don't treat them like cattle.
Yeah.
And the Pope is very much aware of that. And as you say, you can rigorously enforce the immigration laws, but you don't have to do it with great cruelty. But there is actually motive behind the cruelty.
Right. They're trying to deter people from coming.
And to get people to self-deport.
Self-deport, right.
So they're trying to make the experience as cruel and as inhumane as they possibly can. And they've even said that. They've been right out in front and saying, yes, we want to try to convince people to self-deport and keep people from coming here.
Cruelty. What else can you say?
Yeah.
All right. So which of these topics do you want to do next? We've got the flotilla. We've got Kash Patel and the ADL. We've got...
Let's do Kash.
Okay. Kash Patel ordered the FBI to cut ties with the Anti-Defamation League, severing a decades-long relationship on hate crime monitoring.
Yes, this is just, as I said, you need a new word. It's beyond hypocrisy. The administration is using, and as we've explained many times here, falsely, illegitimately, disingenuously, the cudgel of anti-Semitism to go after institutions like Harvard or Columbia University. And as I've explained many times, Donald Trump is an exemplar of anti-Semitism, dining at Mar-a-Lago with two of the most notorious anti-Semites in America, saying there are fine people among those chanting Jews will not replace us, saying you're not a good Jew if you don't support me, and if I don't win, I'm going to blame the Jews, constantly blaming Jewish Holocaust George Soros for every ill in America. So clearly, this is all pretextual, and Kash Patel has explicitly given the lie to the administration's concern with anti-Semitism. The Anti-Defamation League is the nation's leader in the fight against anti-Semitism, publicizing anti-Semitic episodes, keeping track of anti-Semitic incidents, speaking out firmly and strongly against anti-Semitism. And here is Kash Patel now breaking a long-term relationship between the FBI and the organization that is the chief opponent of anti-Semitism in the United States.
Someone pointed out in regards to the shutdown that we talked about earlier that the ballroom is still going strong, folks. Don't you worry.
What?
Yep. The ballroom construction is continuing as planned.
Well, we don't care if people get health care, but as long as we have a golden ballroom for Trump to use in the White House, that's all that matters. I wonder if the tricking out of the $400 million jet is also going on.
I bet whoever they fire in this next round of federal employees, I bet all those savings won't even cover the ballroom itself.
No. Assuming there are any savings.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like even the amount of money that you would directly, quote unquote, save from those firings, I doubt that even covers the ballroom.
Yeah, or the combination of the ballroom and the jet, which together are close to $1 billion, and then it's not going to come close to covering the many tens of billions that they've poured into ICE.
Good point. All right, so we could do the flotilla. We could do blocking aid to
the Attorney General's suit. Yes.
20 state attorneys general are suing Trump's administration over a new rule that blocks aid to certain sex abuse and rape survivors. No, they're pro-life, Dad.
Oh, we're pro-life.
Oh,
but,
pro-life.
As Trump says, it's not really a crime if a husband has a little fight with his wife, right? We don't really care about things like that. J.D. Vance, the great exponent of our military, has backed a video from an organization that opposes the votes for women. Perhaps the biggest organization that supports this administration is the Southern Baptist Convention, which doesn't even allow women to become pastors in any affiliated church and has a horrific scandal of sex abuse that they've swept under the rug and covered up. So now explicitly, the administration is saying we are not going to aid victims of sexual abuse unless they can instantly prove their citizenship. So you're some woman.
Citizenship?
Citizenship.
Oh, my God.
So we can't help illegals who are being beaten up or raped. So if you're a woman who's being beaten up or raped and you fled your house, by God, you better find your citizenship papers before you flee from the abuse. So you're not going to get help from the federal government.
Again, back to the Pope. Like, this is how you treat people? A poor woman, an immigrant who might have just been raped. You're like, hold on a second. We need to prove, okay, let's say she is illegal. What, you're supposed to just throw her out on the street after she's been raped? I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and even U.S. citizens, they're not going to have their papers available when they're fleeing abusive relationships.
God, they really do blame everything in this country on immigrants.
Right.
Everything is in this. It's just, oh my God, it makes your stomach turn.
Yeah. It's so, they claim to be, we're America first. This could not be more contrary to the great American tradition. We are a country of immigrants. We're all immigrants, except for, indigenous people who are here before the European settlements. But they're
immigrants. Migration is part of the human experience.
Right. There's
Humans
no
have
fixed...
been moving across the globe for tens of thousands of years.
But leaving aside the indigenous people, all of us who are not of indigenous descent, and that's 97% of Americans, are immigrants here. And not only that, illegal immigrants. They didn't have any legal status when they killed off Indians, took their lands, broke the treaties. Come on.
Right. God damn it, I keep pressing the wrong button. All right.
I'm ready for questions.
We got to do one more topic.
Oh, man. Okay.
I mean,
one more. Let's not argue.
Why not?
Why not?
Let's have it out with you. I got 2 arms. You only got 1.
I know. I'll try to make this quick.
You don't have to.
Okay.
Why are you in a rush? I mean,
I just want to get the questions.
All right, then let's get the question.
No, one more topic.
All right, do you want to do...
You're the boss.
Lindsay Halligan or...
Yeah.
Okay.
Or what's the other one?
Flotilla. The Gaza aid.
Oh, let's do the flotilla.
Okay. Global reaction is pouring in after Israel intercepted a Gaza aid flotilla, dividing allies and sparking new diplomatic tension.
Just when you think Netanyahu couldn't get worse, he gets worse. He has committed so many atrocities in terms of the needless killing of innocent people, the destruction of Gaza. He tries to justify it, and the world isn't buying that I had to do that in order to get at Hamas. But there's no excuse for this blockade, this starving them of aid, this causing children, pregnant women to suffer and even die of starvation or lack of essential medicines. This is, talk about, the Pope's warning about not engaging in inhumane activities. This is really very, very high on the scale of indefensible, inhumane, despicable acts. There's no excuse for it, no whitewashing it. But of course, Trump's not going to put any pressure on Netanyahu in any real way. By the way, how long has it been since he gave Putin a 2-week deadline? Like 2 months?
I don't even know.
It's at least 2 months. And what has he done in those 2 months?
I don't think he's done a single thing.
He hasn't done a single thing.
Yeah.
He's not going to do a single thing to Netanyahu either.
Yeah. And it's crazy. I heard that Israel is saying that these flotillas are somehow tied to Hamas. I mean, it seems like that's their excuse for everything on Earth.
Everything.
This is tied to Hamas. It's like,
just like illegal immigration.
Yeah.
Everything is illegal immigrants. Everything is Hamas.
Yeah.
Can't feed people.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
It just wears so thin, and the world isn't buying it. And Netanyahu has done irreparable damage. I hope it's not irreparable, but it could well be, to Israel. It used to be a moral beacon for the world. Now it's become a moral pariah under Netanyahu, who is Donald Trump's guy in Israel. Don't whitewash that for 1 second.
All right, let's get to some questions.
You have housekeeping.
Why do you always jump the gun on me? I'm about to do it.
Wow.
Some housekeeping.
You're way ahead of me.
Also buy the book.
Buy the damn book, yeah.
Conservative at the Core. A New History of American Conservatism.
It explains everything.
Explains everything.
Every darn thing.
You don't even need to read. This is the only book you need to read for the rest of your life. It explains everything. It's the theory of everything.
Wasn't there some kids' TV show, Hannah Explains It All?
Yeah, Clarissa Explains It All.
Yeah, this explains it all.
Yeah. Okay, got it. So don't forget to buy the book. Let's see. We have almost 1,000 people watching, but only 300 likes.
Oh!
Are you kidding me? Don't forget to like the stream. It helps us a lot. Click that notification bell so you know we're live. And subscribe. We're posting clips, so make sure you're checking out our clips on our videos tab.
Didn't our last clip get 100,000?
Finally, we had one clip that finally, our clips were doing horrific. They were getting like 1,000, 2,000 views. Finally, last night we had a clip that actually got some views, so that's fun to see.
Over 100,000.
Yeah. A lot of people are, I guess we haven't updated this episode, what happened to your arm. A lot of people have asked what happened to your arm. He had shoulder replacement surgery.
Yes.
So he is in recovery. So the good news is he's going up from here, but he's got to keep his arm pretty much immobilized for the next month. So you'll see him in a sling.
Yes, but that's not stopping me from doing the best I can in speaking with you, answering your questions.
No doubt.
Even though, I am in a bit of pain.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, you're doing yeoman's work. All right, you ready for some questions?
I'm always ready.
And also people are asking, why are you so early? Because we didn't want to compete with playoff baseball and Thursday night football. He's a huge Yankees fan. It's game 3 elimination. He wanted to watch the Yankees game, so we pushed it up a little earlier.
And I wanted all our fans to be able to watch either the Yankees game or Thursday night football.
Right.
But I certainly did.
Right.
Hey, I grew up in New York. I remember Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra,
What?
Elston Howard, yes.
You were alive when those guys were playing?
Oh, yeah.
What are you, 200 years old?
Pretty much.
Jeez. All right.
But, I don't remember Rogers Hornsby or old Pete Alexander or Ty Cobb or Babe Ruth.
I don't even know who those first 2 guys were. But I don't know who Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb are, but...
All big-time Hall of Famers.
Okay, got it. All right. Are you ready for the first question or not, dude?
I'm ready.
Okay, you're ready.
And I don't remember Honus Wagner.
Are you ready or not? You
I'm
want to keep
ready.
naming baseball players no one's heard of from 200 years ago.
Right.
This is from member Miles Wolf. You all right?
Yeah.
Is it conceivable that Trump could just be keeping the government shut down for the entire remainder of his term?
Wouldn't shock me. Wouldn't shock me.
It wouldn't shock me either. Yeah.
I think it's unlikely.
Yeah, but
I hadn't thought about that. But nothing that Trump does shocks me or surprises me anymore. There are no guardrails. There is no respect for law, the Constitution, not a shred of humanity or morality there. He'll do whatever he thinks serves him and his wealthy friends.
Gentlemen, prayers for you both on Yom Kippur. Oh, yeah, it is Yom Kippur.
Oh, yeah, I have a lot of sins I'm atoning for.
And unfortunately, there was an attack on a synagogue today in the UK.
UK, yes, just horrific. And Kash Patel is breaking with the premier organization that opposes anti-Semitism in America on Yom Kippur.
No. This Trump administration, they're supposed to be the crusaders against anti-Semitism, Dad.
Yeah, except when it comes to actually fighting anti-Semitism. Yeah. On Yom Kippur, they make this break.
Right.
Boy, do they have a lot to atone for, but I don't think they're going to.
No. They say, I've been thinking about your model in the context of the upcoming New Jersey gubernatorial race. I don't have 13 keys to the governor's mansion, but based on the state's history, while also running for an open seat, it may be an uphill climb for Mike Sherrill. Any suggestions for making an informed prediction?
Many years ago, I did try to develop keys to the governorship.
In 1868,
something like that, yeah.
Approximately.
And it was too hard because there are 50 different races under 50 different circumstances. But what I can tell you is you can't take the keys to the White House and apply them to gubernatorial elections. The driving forces behind gubernatorial elections are different. But one fact that you're absolutely right, that does hurt incumbents, both for the presidency and for governorships, and we saw that, of course, in the last presidential election, was an open seat. And that does create a handicap for the Democrats. So this may be a difficult race for the Democrat, but I don't follow state politics enough to make a prediction. I don't want to mislead you, but the best source, and I've said this before, do you remember what I always recommend people to look at for state and local races?
Yes, the Cook Report.
The Cook Political Report, originated by my old friend Charlie Cook.
You guys met in 1888?
Pretty much. I think we both were campaigning for Grover Cleveland.
Someone in the chat just said, I feel safer with the government shutdown. It will be interesting to see. Yeah. Is this
the problem is all the thugs are still operating in ICE.
Yeah, that's true. But it will be interesting to see, like, is this gonna make things harder for Trump, easier for Trump?
Easier.
Yeah, I think probably easier.
Yeah.
Because he was already acting without Congress. So.
Right.
But, like, maybe there'll be some things that he can't do just because
Congress
there's
is
not money
still,
there. Or, I don't know.
in session. The
No, they're about
shutdown does not shut down the Congress.
But they're about to leave, I thought.
Well, they can leave, yeah, but not because of the shutdown.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I think they're leaving because of the shutdown.
Right. They can use the shutdown as
an excuse to
for
leave.
leaving, but
You're
it doesn't
saying
require
technically-
them
Oh.
to leave. They're not covered, but they still get paid, as far as I
Right.
know. They still have their health insurance, as far as I know.
This is from Barbandry. They say, "Hello, Dr. Lichtman and Sam. Do you think the protests in the streets are effective? Do they need to be more often? What other notable street protests other than Vietnam do you think were effective in bringing change?"
Street protests have been effective in bringing about change. Obviously, the protests against the Vietnam War are a singular example, but perhaps even a more significant example would be the civil rights protests of the 1960s that led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, that at least on paper broke the back of segregation and Jim Crow discrimination, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which provided new opportunities for minorities to register, vote, and elect candidates of their choice. Interesting. One of the things that Charlie Kirk, whose death I mourn, but who I don't think should be celebrated, one of the things he attacked was Martin Luther King, who he called an awful person, and the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which was the key element of striking against segregation and nearly 100 years of Jim Crow discrimination. How you could be against that and still be a moral person is utterly beyond my comprehension. Again, consistent with what Pope Leo says. Not just Pope Leo.
He's not a puppy. He's a pope.
You got to look at someone's whole record if you want to judge their humanity and their morality.
I don't know. I'm becoming a little bit more cynical about protests. It feels like when Trump, in 2016, when Trump first came into office, I was living in Boston, and I was at every protest. And I was there, and it just kind of felt like really, like sort of like a marching band. Like, yeah, we're cheering, and we're all in camaraderie.
That's what he wants you to think, that it's all futile. Why bother?
But
I don't think
agree.
it was futile. I think it did play a role in the big losses that Trump suffered in the midterm elections of 2018. We saw the power of the backlash with Jimmy Kimmel. He gets rehired
That's
because...
different, though.
I understand. I understand why it's different. But nonetheless, do not discount the power of backlash.
I'm not discounting the power of backlash. I'm sort of discounting the power of these sort of like tame, cheery, signy protests through the streets of major cities. You might be right. Maybe they did make a difference, but they didn't make a huge difference, I don't think.
You've got to do what you can do. It's very, very difficult to oppose someone who wields power the way that Trump does. And certainly demonstrations are not the only thing. I've outlined a 5 or 6 point program, but I don't think we should abandon them. I think if possible, we should increase them.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with increasing them or becoming more strategic like the civil rights movement was too. I think part of the issue right now is sort of like we're protesting Trump and all the bad stuff, and it's kind of just like this gobbledygook.
I agree with you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely, the beauty of the civil rights demonstrations, well, they were very strategic. For example, King and his allies were very, very careful in staging major civil rights demonstrations in '63 in Birmingham, Alabama. Do you know why they picked Birmingham, Sam?
Tell me.
Because Bull Connor, the director of public safety in Birmingham, was a notorious, violent, white supremacist segregationist. And they knew that he would viciously attack peaceful demonstrators, that would be seen in living rooms across America and be critical in turning support for civil rights legislation.
I guess I'm saying I don't disagree that there should be people standing up to this administration. I just think these sort of like general, every once in a while, stomps through the streets, hold your signs and go home isn't that effective. It needs to be either more often, more direct, better strategized, like the civil rights movement.
I agree, but that's hard. Of
course it's hard.
The civil rights movement did have a certain focal point and certain limits.
But that's why
this is much more nebulous.
Yeah, and that's why I think the Jimmy Kimmel thing was so effective. It was a very clear strategy. Everybody go online and delete your Disney Plus accounts. Like, very planned, very focused, very effective. Okay, let's move on.
Maybe you should be the one to plan, focus, and direct it.
Okay, how do I do that?
Don't ask me. I'm not a political organizer. Ask your mom.
I'm not a political organizer either.
Your mom is.
This is from Philip H., our good friend. $5 donation. Thank you for the donation. We're light on donations today.
Oh, no. We need them.
They say, I suspect Trump will use the government shutdown to do something sinister. What could he do to damage the system he couldn't do otherwise?
There's probably technically nothing he could do that he couldn't do otherwise, but it just gives him cover to do what he wants to do. Already talking about laying off hundreds of thousands of workers. He's already begun to cancel grants to Democratic cities and Democratic states. He canceled $18 billion, not million, in infrastructure grants to New York City. Remember, he said, I'm, the great infrastructure king. We're going to, celebrate infrastructure. And something like $8 billion to blue state programs on climate change. So, he could use this as an opportunity both to fire people and to withhold federal aid. Based on politics, of course.
Thank you, Dramatic Folk Freak, for becoming a member. Appreciate that.
Nice.
We got about 4 or 5 minutes left.
Okay. 2 more questions. My hand is starting to fall asleep.
Okay, 2 more
from
questions.
Being immobile.
Oh, no. This is from member Ben England. They say, we talked about that earlier. Thank you, Ben. They're talking about the warning label on these governments.
Yeah.
He's talking about the CDC website that now has a banner. Democratic analysis keeps saying that our messaging is better, but still needs more work. We can't stoop to the MAGA level, but how can we improve? This is exhausting.
We've talked about this so much.
I don't think Dem messaging...
You got to stop worrying about stooping down. One of the worst things I ever heard a Democrat say was someone I admire, Michelle Obama, when he says, they go low, we go high. Pile of nonsense. You can't worry. You can't go too low when it comes to messaging against them. You can't worry that they're going to retaliate against you. As we've seen so amply in the last 6 or 7 months, they're going to do it anyway. So absolutely there should be no constraints on how powerful and how aggressive your message has to be.
I don't think the Dems' messaging has gotten any better.
I haven't seen it get any better.
Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, I feel like, have disappeared. I feel like, they were sort of in the news recently when they went to meet with Trump, but the only people on the other side of the aisle that I feel like are messaging well are AOC and Bernie Sanders. And, there are some others. There are some others who are not.
Crockett and, Senator Murphy. But for the most part, no. They're not being as aggressive as they can, as compelling as they can, and speaking in the way they could to ordinary Americans, and have not been nearly as effective in exposing what Trump is doing. If I'm not, touting our own horn, but if you take this show as an example, we don't just throw out names, right? We don't just say, Trump's a fascist. In fact, you've heard me say I've avoided, these labels and these names because they're meaningless. But we are very specific in calling out exactly what Trump is doing and why it undermines the well-being of Americans and poses a grave danger to our democratic republic. So it's not a matter of calling names. It's a matter of being incisive, crisp, and compelling in your analysis.
I think one thing that's interesting is to think about messaging in terms of a lot of the cities that Trump is sending these troops to. For example, Portland, Los Angeles, right? These are two major American cities that are facing very similar crises: affordability crises and unhoused crises, a homeless crisis. So I think what the Dems need to do is really tackle this affordability crisis.
Absolutely.
I think they're doing a good job with healthcare, but I think most people in this country, it'd be better if you send in some sort of solutions to Portland to deal with the affordability crisis, and in LA to deal with the homelessness and the affordability crisis.
Yes, Democrats need to do that. And they've got plenty to draw on. Far more. What Republicans? What have they done? Name one thing that they've done for ordinary Americans in the last 7 months. Terrorize people, give big tax breaks to the rich, cut your Medicaid and your food stamps, and also indirectly threatening Social Security, Medicare, the Affordable Care Act.
I would say affordability.
Absolutely.
Affordability, healthcare, labor, and
crime.
No, the oligarchy. I would say those are the four things that Democrats need to focus on.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do a final question from George Politis, who just donated $80.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, George.
He definitely deserves a question, even though my hand is falling asleep.
Sorry,
here.
last question.
George.
Do you think Trump is doing the government shutdown so he can use the funding to fund ICE? They've already got so much money.
They've already got as much funding as they need for ICE. I think it's more he's using it to cut other funding that he wants to use to punish Democrats and liberals and to undermine programs that he doesn't believe in, like programs to combat catastrophic climate change.
All right, with that, we will wrap up Lichtman Live for this evening. Thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate that. Go Yankees. Any final words to the people, Dad?
Yeah, we will keep you informed. We will do as much in-depth analysis, historical perspective, not just call names, not just make generalizations, but be very pointed and specific in what we have to say and in the way we answer your very excellent questions.
All right.
I'm going to go watch the Yankees.
All right. Thank you, Comic Fan, Andrew Beard, and someone just sent a donation at the very end of the show, HW93, for your donations that didn't get on air. All right. Thank you all, and we'll see you on Tuesday.